All right, hard yarners. What an incredible episode. Definitely one I think I needed to prod me to make sure we keep questioning things that need to be questioned. But before we talk about our guests and what we spoke about today, anyone watching at home who's can see our wonderful guest, Sall Grover, you'll see behind her, alltradescover.com.au. If you're looking for any sort of insurance as a tradie, sole trader, or even like me, I'm putting on that show, the conference in April, you get liability insurance. Anything you need coverage for, hit them up. All Trades is, they're local and real good people. And one of our guests, one of our favourite guests, is the owner of the company, John Elliott. So get around him, alltradescover.com.au. Please use the code word or just drop our name. Drop the hard yarns and you should hopefully help us earn more money. So that would be good. Also, this episode is brought to you by Goat Tape. Do you do much breath work or anything like that? Or do you like...
I'm gonna vape, but
yeah,
no, I do. I was like a obsessed yoga.
Okay, cool.
Like
yeah, so this is
5
really
years.
good for that. Like you chuck it on the nose. The nose tape is really opens up the lungs, getting a bit more oxygen. And I use it at night, and I've just started using their mouth tape a lot. And fuck, that difference that makes. You just bounce out of bed. So definitely hit them up. Goat. I think it's goat.com. Anyway, go onto our show notes or in our bio. You will see the website. Use the code word HARDYARN to get your Goat Tape. And I think it's about 10 to 15% off. And finally, this episode is brought to you by Feed. Feed is a supplement company. It's animal-based. It is locally sourced, ethically sourced. And you get beef, liver, you get the organ complex, collagen, honey, all the lot. Collagen definitely paying off, I hope. We'll see what happens. But definitely help with the knee and joint pain. So get around the Feed in our bio. The link is there. Use the code word again, hard yarn for 10% off. So thank you so much to all of our sponsors. Without you guys, we couldn't be delivering these sorts of messages. But we were joined by Sall Grover. Controversial almost figure, but necessary. And what a bloody good episode. What do we talk about today?
That men aren't women, that this is not just a women's rights issue. It really does affect everybody because it is freedom of speech, freedom of belief, and freedom of association, which gender ideology is in conflict with all of these things, and that Australia is one of, if not the most captured countries in the world on this issue.
Well, I certainly didn't want to divide people anymore, but this is one of those topics that I think needs to be talked about. We need to stay vocal and we can't be silenced. So you've very much motivated me. When I come back from Thailand, we're fucking going head first into these sorts of topics, and really appreciate your time. So let's get hard.
Welcome to Hard Yarns Podcast.
I am fucking fat.
Anything Chris White says, please disregard it.
5D is actually a state of being. It's a unity consciousness.
That was Hard Yarns with me, Frankie Rose. So I'm going to throw it over to your co-host,
Daniel Delby.
And Cameron Branch.
I would do this and then I'd gong.
Free in attendance for the millions listening at home. Let's get hard.
All right. Thank you so much. Last minute jumping on.
Okay.
Appreciate it. And it's a nice little last minute one for me as well. I'm flying out tonight, so I'm very due for a break at the moment. It's been a heavy time at the moment, and lots of elections and laws and a few things have been going on lately. So this is I think it's a perfect alignment. So firstly, before we get into anything, give a bit of a brief description who you are, what you do, and why you're here today.
Cool. So my name's Sal. In 2018, I got an idea to create a social networking app exclusively for women to find roommates, freelance work, and lesbian dating, sort of a Twitter-style like posting thing.
Yep.
Just a little place for women to sort of be able to escape, have a refuge.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that men were claiming to actually be women, and that not only that people were taking it seriously.
Yeah.
And that laws had been changed.
So this is the the like the transgender stuff. Yep.
Yeah. So in 2020, when we were on the App Store and Google Play just doing beta testing, still ironing out all the bugs, like it wasn't nearly ready to go. Close, but not quite there.
Yep.
It was discovered by what I've come to know are trans activists who did thousands upon thousands of one-star reviews and put it into an algorithmic black hole. In hindsight, now no, they cancelled us right out of the gate. You can't get out of that hole. And, you know, I was called a transphobe and a bigot and a TERF, and I'd never heard the word TERF before. And I was like, what's going on? So I started to just do some research, found that there was this corner of the internet where women were speaking up, saying there's massive problems here. Went researching, sort of cross-referencing, discovered that they were not telling a word of a lie. In fact, it was even worse than what some women were even describing. It was really, really bad. Institutional and government capture across the Western world. At the time, just sort of backtracking a little bit before I didn't really know how bad it was, I remember saying to my mum, this is so stupid, it will blow over really quickly. Let's just tread water.
Yeah.
We're fine. I believe I said, it'll be about 4 months. I don't know where I got that figure from, but I just felt like
this will blow over.
Within a few months, like this will all be fine. Cut to about 18 months of treading water, I received an Australian Human Rights Commission complaint on the basis of gender identity discrimination from a man who claims to be a woman. To settle it in the AHRC, I would have had to agree to let him on, let all men who claim to be women on go to sex and gender education, which could only be re-education, go pay $20,000, pay him $20,000, apologize to him, and also moderate all the content on the platform so that men who claim to be women weren't offended by anything that women were saying. And so I said,
no. That seems so. You like, and this is something we've been battling with ourselves, and what I alluded to at the start, like causing more division and hate, and I don't want to feed into it. But at certain points, you cannot deny facts. And I'm not going to change what I'm thinking and saying just to appease someone's feelings.
100%. Also, I'm not the one causing the division. I'm saying just women are adult human females. This is a statement of fact. If you are saying that men can also be women, the onus of proof is on you, and you've got a uphill battle there, buddy.
Is it XY chromosome?
Yeah.
XY? Yeah, pretty simple.
And so I said no, knowing that the risk could be that he would file in federal court, which he did. In this process at the AHRC was when I was, because I didn't know this yet. It was brought to my attention that the laws in Australia had actually already been changed. So when, you see trans activists banging on about, trans rights are human rights and, we're the most oppressed minority in the world. It's like, oh, no. They actually already got the laws changed in stealth. This is all performative. What had happened in Australia in 2013 under Julia Gillard's government, they took the definitions of both man and woman out of the Sex Discrimination Act and they put in gender identity, thereby muddling the whole thing. Because gender identity and sex are obviously in conflict with each other, or that it was which one has more weight in law. And so, and it wasn't like this for sort of from 2013 to 2022 when I had this, it's not like it had been working. People were being intimidated constantly. I've been contacted by most of the people who were, that they've just had to pay these men money to settle. They've just had to let them in. Like the Australian Human Rights Commission was intimidating them with it of basically, if you don't do this, it's off to the federal court for you and it's $1 million in legal fees.
For what essentially is, as rude as this sounds, a mental...
It's 100% a mental illness.
A mental
illness and a fetish. Don't get me wrong, there are people within the trans movement who are victims of it.
Yeah, diluting a very real problem for some people who have... Because you don't want to, obviously, if someone's suffering from a mental illness, the last thing you want to do is make them feel worse about that.
100%, but the worst thing to do for someone who is in extreme distress about their reality. So if you are dealing with someone who's in extreme distress by the fact that they are male, the worst thing you can do to that person is lie to them and validate their delusion. You are just putting them down further and further down a hole that they're never going to be able to get out of. The kindest thing to do is actually to be like, okay, let's ground you in reality. Let's help you deal with the reality of the one body you are ever going to have, rather than going and doing surgical procedures on it to make changes that don't change your sex.
And that's not a controversial way of thinking about things.
Well,
It shouldn't be.
If only you worked at the AHRC.
And that shouldn't be like, it should be like, how can we help these people feel at ease with who they are?
Yeah.
Because you're not going to be able to change who you are. Never can.
No, and it's like if we were in some kind of movement where, you know, it was just like, oh, basically men can be feminine and women can be masculine and this should be completely normalized. Be like, I would be 100% for that. I think that is very, very healthy. People do have different personalities. That's all it is at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's just different personalities. You do not need to medicalize that, have surgical intervention. You don't need to become a new demographic of people. Nothing. You can just be who you are.
Yeah.
So the people, I think, who are causing the division and the hate and the chaos are the ones making what is some of the most absurd claims of modern times, that men can actually be women, that sex is changeable, which is basically what happened. So the case went to federal court. And then the Australian Human Rights Commission intervened as amicus curiae in that, which they have a statutory right to do. So the Sex Discrimination Commissioner intervened and then argued on the side of gender identity. It's very bizarre.
Yeah.
And then we got the judgment, the decision for that in August of last year, and the judge said that sex is changeable and that this man is a woman, and it's indirect gender identity discrimination for me to not have acknowledged that. I was charged $10,000 in damages because I laughed in court, which that's a fun story we can get into.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm appealing now. So now what was the stupidest named court case in the world was Tickle v. Giggle, because the person who took me to court is Roxy Tickle. The app was called Giggle. So
Oh, fucking hell.
like, how is this my real life?
Yeah. How is it?
Seriously. So Tickle v. Giggle is now Giggle v. Tickle. And yeah, so we're deep in the fight for that.
Tickle v. Giggle.
Yeah, the stupidest named court case of all time, which I think sometimes I do wonder if the name has hindered it a bit of some people thinking it's not something to take seriously because it sounds so stupid. And then when people do realize, oh no, this is like the what is a woman case. It's the first case in the world of its kind that was testing gender identity versus sex in discrimination law. And what adds to that is Australia's Sex Discrimination Act is based on CEDAW, which is the Convention of Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, which is a UN convention signed by 187 countries. So we're sort of the first ones going in to defend CEDAW, because CEDAW is it's a document of biological reality, basically. Yeah. And so while there is no mention of gender identity in CEDAW, there have definitely been attempts from activists to put it in there. The best they've been able to do is sort of tinker around the edges with these different sort of documents that aren't ratified or signed by anybody. And there's one that states that it also covers other status. And so our judge's interpretation has been that other status is gender identity, which if it was, you'd just say gender identity. But yeah, so he's made a very broad decision that is complete nonsense.
Very broad when it's vague and it can be definitely manipulated and abused.
Yeah, I mean, which it has been. I mean, the intention of the Sex Discrimination Act in Australia was sex-based protections for women. In 2013, one of the things they did bring in was sexual orientation specific protections, which obviously I'm all for.
Yeah.
But because what we want to do right now is repeal those 2013 amendments, but that doesn't mean we want to repeal, say, the sexual orientation part, because that's not in conflict with CEDAW or the Sex Discrimination Act. That's a sex-based right, which is what the Sex Discrimination Act is, which is what the Sex Discrimination Commissioner, Anna Cody, seems to completely have forgotten. Yeah,
and obviously this has come from a place of there must have been if you've come up with this app specifically for a safe place for women, This must have been an area that you'd already felt like was required for women, and now it feels like almost a slap in the face to all feminists in the past who have really worked for the rights of women.
I feel that what has happened, say to me personally, is actually a proof of concept, because we wanted just basically women to be able to have a female in this space in the palm of their hand whenever they needed it. The lengths a man will go to get into it has actually proven the need for it. It's not like I'm sitting here going, oh gosh, we don't need these anymore. And look, I mean, I'm for male-only spaces for recreation and privacy and dignity as well. I do think that there has been a little bit of overreach in certain areas. Feminists back in the day who were fighting to get women into government and boardrooms did the right thing.
Yes.
Those are where decisions about all of society are made. Women are half of society. They should be in those rooms. But in terms of like, just like social clubs or like, barbershops or anything like that, knock yourself out. Have fun. I think that this shouldn't be a controversial thing to talk about. I think that in this fight of getting everything back on track, it is an opportunity for everybody to sort of go, okay, let's actually find the balance here, rather, because I do get some men coming at me going, ha ha ha, this is just payback. And it's like, well, no, it's not, because women weren't gaslighting you that we were actually men and that you had to completely change your perception of reality. They just wanted to be in the room where decisions were being made. Was there some overreach in certain areas? Yep, I think that's a conversation that could have, and I'd probably be on your side. Rather than sit there and just point fingers at each other, why don't we fix it?
Where are the extreme, the extreme feminists at the moment? It feels like it's almost become almost a fad or like a group to align with. But I see the ones who seem to be almost, what's the word, using it. I don't want to say posturing, but they're very silent on this part of the topic.
Well, it depends who you're talking about, because so often, like, there'll be someone, it'll be a guy that comes into this fight and where are all the feminists? And you're like, we're in court, dude.
Yeah.
But it's like, who are you talking about? Because there's always been different fractions of feminism, and feminism is always, it is this sort of weird thing. It is just sort of a political ideology to get equality for women in law and society. So at the end of the day, if someone's not doing that, like, I think it's an action more than anything.
Yeah.
And so it's like, who is this group? Like, you've got what they're sort of being referred to as the lib femmes, which is the women who are out there saying trans women are women and sex workers work. And you're like, I don't think that you're here for women.
And it's also the idea of tearing other people down to build themselves up. Whereas, like, let's bring women up. Let's bring let's bring trans people, like anyone who's in that sort of oppressed sort of state. Let's bring them all up and make them feel accepted. But that doesn't mean we change.
Like, fine, that you could have a demographic of people or a movement that's doing that, but it's just not feminism. Like, at its most basic level, feminism has to be working for females. Yeah. Otherwise, what's the point of it? Yeah. So if you're doing something that's actually working against the rights of females, like, you can call yourself a feminist, but you're just not. I mean, we are in this weird era of self-ID. So I think that there are a lot of people out there who are using the feminist word where it really doesn't belong. And then, but the byproduct of that is that all women are being tarnished with that brush. And it's like, no, actually, the women who are really doing the work, which is like, I mean, it really stems from the UK. Like, that was sort of the epicenter of the women who were fighting back. They've just been amazing. It's called Turf Island for a reason. They are the most ferocious fighters, and we've all benefited from, like, learning how they have done it. But feminism has also always been in waves, and so there's an argument to be made that the next wave of feminism is this sort of radical feminist, gender critical feminism, which is going back to very much sex-based realities and essentially starting again. Yeah. So that's where we are.
Yeah, it does feel we're at a turning point. The pendulum swing, it's like it went too far. The only thing I get afraid of when something goes too far, the overcorrection in the other direction is often pretty violent and almost just as bad.
Totally.
And I don't like that as well.
I mean, the at the moment we can see we're at the beginning of the swing to conservatism.
Yeah.
And that's going to potentially it could last a few decades.
Yes.
And so it's, I think, our job to make sure that it does not swing to this complete opposite direction.
Correct.
None of us want that either.
Yeah.
Of just find this nice balance in the center where everyone...
Wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't it be really nice? Where, like, we don't have to sit there and, like, think about all this stuff all the time. Where everyone can just go and live their lives. Like, because, say, like, the compromise, like, with the issue that I deal with, which is the gender ideology stuff, it's like the compromise isn't letting them in to women's spaces or accepting them as women. The compromise is you can live your life however you see fit. Like, if it makes you feel better in the morning to wake up and say that you're a woman when you're not, like, all power to you. Like, I don't really care. That doesn't affect me. Like, you know, in a liberal, democratic, secular society, you also have freedom of belief that is none of my business.
Yeah.
It only becomes my business if you're saying I have to believe it too. And the moment I've got to believe it too, we've got a rights conflict. And which brings us back to the Sex Discrimination Act, which is basically enforcing this on us, which is where it becomes a free speech, a freedom of belief, and a freedom of association issue.
So how was this act passed without any of the public knowing?
Stealth. Yeah, exactly. So basically they did nothing. It was like 400 words was sort of the speech that was doing it. And it was just, it never went to a public vote either. And it was just, it was just the Labor senators who did it. Some of them who are still in. I mean, Penny Wong voted to take them out. Katie Gallagher, the current Minister for Women, who literally voted to take the definition of woman out of the Sex Discrimination Act. Like, I was just going after her on X just before. She just done this tweet of, like, we need protections for women. I'm like, excuse me?
Yeah. Are you serious?
What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I'll give you my number. Let's talk. Like, I have been trying to talk to you about this for years. Like, what do you think I'm doing? I'm not over here doing an Irish jig. I'm trying to get protections for women in law. We need them.
Yeah.
But we know, like, wouldn't it be great if it was easier to just make no more bad men?
Yeah.
If we could succeed with that, we'd do that. But
Yeah.
we've tried. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
We know that there's always going to be some out there, and so there has to be certain protections. But I don't even think you need to even use that argument necessarily, because, for example, with male-only spaces, it's not a security thing. It's not safety. It is just privacy, dignity, and recreation. I think that's enough. Like, I think I want a male or female-only space is a good enough reason. Like, there are trans-only apps, incidentally. There's like 14 or 15 of them on the App Store and Google Play right now. Like,
So they come for yours.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then so what's the scenario then moving forward for that? Because if you've lost initially
Yes.
and you're appealing. Are you allowed to comment on much of it?
I can talk about it pretty freely. I just during it, like last year, you have to sort of be more careful. But that part, the first round is closed now. Like, that's done. So I can talk about it. I mean, it was utterly bizarre. The Australian Human Rights Commission intervened in the case as amicus curiae, as I said. And I recommend everyone, you can go onto the federal court website, just type in Tickle v. Giggle, and you can see the AHRC's 2 submissions. They're public. It is like reading a draft of 1984 that Orwell went, well, this is nonsense.
Yeah.
No one's going to believe this. But the AHRC picked up and went, we'll give it the old college try and implement it. They are literally, at one point in it, they say, when they're just addressing different parts of the Sex Discrimination Act, they say a man's desire to be pregnant is sufficient for him to be classed as a woman under law. And you're like, what are you talking
changing
about?
the definitions of a mum to a birthing person.
Birthing person. And basically, in that case, the provision they're talking about is, you know, there needed to be a protection in law for women. So say a woman's in the workplace, she's 32, she gets engaged, and say the employer goes, oh, well, she's going to want to be pregnant soon. I don't want to deal with maternity leave, so I'll get rid of her. There needed to be protections in the law that women weren't just fired for making life choices.
Yeah.
So they've turned that around to make it that basically, a man with a pregnancy fetish, it's a thing. He has those same protections. Genevieve Gluck, who's a brilliant journalist who has gotten very much down the rabbit hole of all of this stuff, she sums it up best. Basically, having gender identity in the Sex Discrimination Act makes sexual perversions and kinks a protected characteristic, and it gives the people who have them more rights than anyone else.
And this stems to some pretty dark places I've seen as well, which that's not the focus, and I understand, but like it, I think it's minor attracted individuals.
There's those, and then there's autogynophiles. So autogynophiles are that's men who are aroused by the idea of themselves as a woman, and so this is the majority of men that we're talking about at this point, like people with actual legitimate, if it's a real thing, gender dysphoria. Like obviously there are people who are distressed.
Correct.
Yes. However, as I said, giving it this thing of gender ideology, there's a lot of dialogue now of like, hang on, this was never the right way to go about this. It should have always been de-escalating the distress and getting these people grounded in reality rather than indulging a delusion. With autogynephilia, this is not gender dysphoria, but they hide behind gender dysphoria with it. So these are men who, as I said, who are aroused by the idea of themselves as a woman. It is being exacerbated at the moment because of porn. There's huge rabbit holes they go down.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even Google it, but there's something called like hypno-sissy porn or something like that. Yeah, I've not Googled it because I don't want that in my algorithm.
No.
But
Yes.
just general, I'm like, what Instagram reel will I get shown from that?
Yeah.
But yeah, and I mean, when you're getting really further down the rabbit hole of autogynephilia, you've got castration fetishes. So basically, when you've how that then comes out into society is, oh, well, if they've had the surgery, then they can go into the woman-only space. And it's like, no, 9 times out of 10, the person who's done the surgery, you're dealing with the person who is the most perverse. So, yeah, and not being able to talk about this freely in society and having especially in Australia, having our media so captured has meant that, I sound like a raging lunatic right now. Because you're going, what is she talking about? Like, castration fetishes and pregnancy fetishes, they're a thing. But it's been so silenced because everyone's empathy has been weaponized to be kind to this apparent marginalized demographic who had so much power they could get laws changed in stealth.
So the interesting thing as well is 90% of people agree with what you're saying right now anyway.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of them are silent because of this massive mouthpiece that is the media, that is the government.
Yep.
By design,
definitely. I mean, I think I have a theory that there was probably quite a few, even like high-powered, like people who were quite well-meaning, who, because you hear, oh, you've got to be kind, and you think, of course, I'll be kind. Like everyone does want to be kind, and like, I remember hearing, just in the background that it was now the LGBT, and I was like, well, I support the LGBT. If there's a new letter, of course, I'm on board. I was being a good little liberal. I didn't question it. I didn't look into what they were actually doing until like it hit me over the head. But I think there might be some people who did usher it in and were quite loud about it, and then have since realized, oh God, how did I fall for this? And then I think they're quite humiliated that they did. And so rather than go and admit the mistake, which I would have a lot of respect for, I think no human being is immune from falling for bullshit.
Well, I mean, you see...
But they just don't.
Yeah, I mean, you see it with the COVID narrative, and I can't remember who it was from memory. Someone apologised. It was a premier, and instead of receiving like, well, thank you, it was like, well, fucking too late. And so now we're in this place where even if you are to go, I am so sorry, I have fucked up, I made a mistake, I have supported this and I was fooled. And I would find the same issues. I find it really difficult to go back on what I've supported over the years. I know it's a big ego check. But even when you do get the courage to say, I'm sorry, you just get hounded instead of like applauded, which you should be applauded.
But I think if we're at the sort of early stages of going into the era where that's going to really kind of be necessary, we've got to find our humility and our humanity. Like, don't get me wrong, sometimes it would be really hard to be like, okay, yep,
well, it's the I told you so thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like what an arsehole does and what a dickhead does goes, I told you so. And instead of like, if I went vegetarian for 6 years and it really fucked me up in the end, instead of some of my mates who were the whole time going, like, there was a couple who was like, you fucking idiot. Like, but there was a couple who was like, oh, that's good that you found this way forward and you're here now. And That's the way you want to be.
Yeah.
Part of you wants to go, but
Totally. Like, don't get me wrong. There's some people who I'm like, no, you should have known better. Like, say, for example, the Sex Discrimination Commissioner. Like, there is just no excuse. If you don't think that sex matters, don't take the job of Sex Discrimination Commissioner. Like,
correct.
you're ill-equipped.
Yeah.
You're not the right person for that position. You can go and do something else. I don't know. You could go and be the Gender Identity Commissioner of something. But you can't have that job. So there's not a lot of goodwill I have for someone in that position. But just like a normal person or even a normal politician, it's like, I just think that we should all remember, like, as you were saying, ego. Like, it is a really human thing to fall for bullshit. I think we all have at various points in our lives. And, like, it's not over yet. So who knows what the next, like, 40, 50 years is going to bring.
Exactly.
So, just a little bit of, like, let's bring back that empathy that was originally weaponized, but there is a way to actually have a really balanced, normal amount of empathy to be like, okay, like, sure, we all, like, some people, or we all do make mistakes, and we have to find forgiveness in that, because if we don't, we're not going to get anywhere. Like, if we just, it was like how I was saying, like, earlier, like, I do have some men who say to me, like, this is just payback for feminists, going into stopping male-only spaces. It's like, well, okay, if you're just going to sit here and point fingers at each other, well, that's all we're going to be doing.
Correct.
Do you want male-only spaces? Okay, well, let's get them. Let's work together.
Yeah, that whole concept of pointing the finger at others, it's always deflection.
Yes.
I totally have been faced with that a lot lately. The pointing of fingers instead of, like, looking internally and focusing on self, I think, is a big thing. If we focused on ourselves a lot more often, we wouldn't have to deal with everyone else's problems, because we'd all be focused on ourselves and bettering ourselves and learning. And
to a point, there's a way to focus on yourself, but also being aware of the world around you. I mean, there's part of, like, say, especially like this gender stuff, which, like, has made people so obsessed with themselves and, like, that their identity is the most important thing in the world. And it's like, it really isn't.
It's not.
Like, you live in a society, dude.
yes,
So, it is, there is something about, like, focus on, like, clean up your own house first.
yes,
Then go and deal with everything else. So focus on yourself in that context. But then if we weren't as isolated, if we were sort of, I suppose there's focus on community a bit more, of getting people out there. They wouldn't just sit there in a corner shaking because somebody misgendered them. They could see that there is more to life.
yeah. I mean, it feels like maybe it's like I'll watch Charlie Kirk clips, and I don't think he does it justice, because I think he interviews dumb people as well. He has arguments with fucking idiots. Maybe they're all idiots, maybe. But the ones he has arguments with and he clips up, they're fucking idiots. Yeah. And so sometimes I like to see him. He gets challenged by someone who's a little more intellectual and has a good understanding of what they're talking about. But that question of, like, what is a woman always comes up.
Yes.
And then the answer is, like, well, a woman is what a woman...
Anyone who identifies as
a woman. And I get this, like,
what are you identifying as?
I get this idea of, like, well, sex and gender or whatever they're sort of framing it as are different, but you're very much clutching at straws.
Well, what they've done basically is they've tried to make woman a gender identity.
Correct.
Woman isn't a gender identity. Woman is a sex-based term. You've got male, female, man, woman, boy, girl. These are all sex-based terms, because it's just the child version and the adult version, and then the male and female is just sort of the overriding thing. Basically, male and female are the only two that exists. Like, sex is binary.
Yeah.
So these are just some of the most basic facts on the planet. Like, Richard Dawkins, the evolutionary biologist, explained it the best, obviously, out of anyone, because of course it would be him who explains it the best. I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically said, like, the universe, there is so much on a spectrum in the universe. Like, when, like, even in the simplest terms, like, when does short become tall? When does, like, young become old? When does all of these just different things that we have in the universe, and these different concepts. The uniqueness of sex is that it is so strictly binary. And then they'll always, I know exactly what the next question would be from anyone is, well, what about intersex?
Yeah.
No, well, intersex is sort of an old-fashioned term. What it is disorders of sexual development, DSDs, which is chromosomal issues, where basically some people's secondary sex characteristics just don't develop properly. They're still male or female. Like, how dare you say they're not? Like, every human being on this planet is male or female. And to use these people as a way to justify 50-year-old autogynophiles going into bathrooms with little girls is disgusting. So,
and to have this conversation in a a limited character response on a TikTok video or something like that,
or even like on Twitter where you're bound by short things, but at the same time, like, it is so simple, yet because they have made it so seemingly so complicated, you have to spend such a long time explaining it. It's because ultimately it's a war on language. And so that's why, like, they've changed the definition of woman, or they've removed it or whatever, because they can't actually change anything in reality. So the only tool they have is the language. So that's why getting those definitions reinstated, especially in law, is the most important thing. Because when anyone then says, oh, but things like language evolves, it's like, yes, but it's collectively over time. It's quite a natural evolution how language ever evolves. It's not that it's just imposed. It's not that you can just go, like, men are now considered under the banner of women, because it's like, well, then what do we call that group of people who are adult human females? Like, we need a word for them. And cis woman's not going to cut it, because we're not a subclass of our own
Someone
sex class.
calls me a cis man. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, no, I know.
You're just a cis man. No, I'm a man.
Yeah, exactly. And so, that's why the language part of it is so important, because if you give an inch, they're going to take a mile. And they're going, and while anyone listening, like, especially if there are some people listening going, I think feminists caused this. They didn't. This literally was the sexologists who were actually quite homophobic, to be honest, who caused this, and did go into academia where there was crazy women as well as crazy men. Wasn't necessarily as sex-based in that it's just crazy people. Who then, have been just sort of started indoctrinating people with this and pushing it out into society.
I think when it comes to, feminism's a perfect example. When it comes to those sorts of movements, I feel like they can be almost cannibalized and they start to fight within. And there's always a good idea. And then it reaches this point where it's this almost overcorrection that I was talking about, where, they're saying, no, there's no difference between a man and a woman. Like, why can't there be differences between a man and a woman that we celebrate? Like, there are so many things that a man can do that a woman can't, and a woman can do that a man can't. And I think that is beautiful. And that's how we work together.
I completely agree. That there was some things where it's like, I get what they were saying originally, and it's been completely misinterpreted and then pushed in the wrong direction.
Do you think that's by design? Like, I know there's those conspiracy theories about the what's his name, the Russian. Have you heard this? The Russian. This is like 50, 60 years ago, saying, well, like, if we can't win, we're going to indoctrinate their universities in the West and make them question their own objective reality. And it seems like. Did they win? Did they achieve their goal? Because
I mean, if there's the evidence that that's happened.
I mean, that's what they said they wanted to do. That's whether or not it worked or not.
Yeah, I mean,
whether or not. Well, I mean, it has worked.
You hear all the different conspiracies, like like the Chinese were putting, like, through TikTok, were putting this out there, just basically just make them idiots.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
mission accomplished.
They've done that. You see their kids, man, like, and even just their schooling, like the exercises they have to do in between lessons.
I mean, is it better? Because there's something quite robotic about that in quite a different direction. I don't think they're doing critical thinking themselves either. So I don't think we should sit there and praise what's happening there. But like, say with feminism, as I said, like, just at its most basic thing, it's just like, is this something that actually is helping women? If it's not, then it's not that. So are you always going to get bad actors in a movement? Of course. It's why, like, this trans women and women in the sex workers work feminism is such a great example, because you're like, well, who's benefiting from those two slogans? It ain't women. Yeah. Like, I mean, this idea that it's so empowering for, some hot 22-year-old to go and create an OnlyFans and make $40 million a year. I mean, this is such an aberration of the whole system.
Correct.
This is not, I mean, the majority of women in this sex work industry are trafficked women.
Well, and this is, and again, it's another like overreach of this movement of like almost demonizing women who want to be a mum, who want to, who potentially just want to embrace the beautiful.
No, I have this. I've got a 2.5-year-old daughter now. Mm-hmm. So I had my daughter when I was 37, and it wasn't until I was 35 that I woke up and went, whoa, hang on, there's something missing.
Yeah,
I really want to do that. And I think there was a strand of feminism that that failed women in a way. Like my lawyer actually and I we would just traveled together, and we were talking about this a lot. 'Cause she's 7 years older than me, but we both sort of came of age in that Sex and the City era. Mm-hmm. Of you don't need a man, and like a job is the best thing you can have. Which, if that's what you want, cool. Mm. But it just doesn't, like, this is the thing with feminism in general. Like, there's 4 billion females. So, of course, you can't have this one political ideology that just encapsulates everyone. And motherhood's a really hard one to try and work out because it's something that's required to continue the species. So someone's got to do it.
Yeah.
So it's an odd thing to demonize.
I'll question that soon.
Yeah. It's an odd thing to demonize, but it's like, you know, I'll take myself as an example. I'm relatively lucky in that sort of what I am doing professionally at the moment, I mean, for the majority of the time I am at home, I can do it from home. I spend my time with my little girl while simultaneously doing it, so I can do both. But if your profession is, say, being a lawyer, you're not doing that at home. You do have to go to an office, or you're a teacher, or whatever it is. And so, you know, how do you balance that? It does get really hard. It does make for like a very busy life. You're always going to feel like there's a lot of moments where you feel like you're letting one part of it down. So it's this crazy juggling act. And it's like, well, that just needs to be talked about as that. It's just a difficult part of life. It's just like, you know, I understand like at one point why there was a need to really push that women didn't have to become mothers. Like my grandmother wouldn't have been. My grandmother would have gone and worked. It was not for her.
Yeah.
And she had 5 daughters.
Yeah.
But she didn't have a choice.
Yeah,
she really tried. She did not have a supportive father who would allow her to do anything but get married. Yeah. So there was once upon a time where women really had to get to that point. Now, especially in our society, it's much more accepted. Like I've got one of my really close friends. She's 41. Mm-hmm. She doesn't have children. She's incredibly successful, fulfilled, happy. No one is shaming her.
Great.
20, 30 years ago, they probably would have. So there has been work to be able to make women have choice. Like if you don't want to have a child, brilliant, don't have one. If you do, brilliant, do it and don't feel guilty about it. I don't think there's anything wrong with a woman going, actually, you know what? I just want to be a wife and a mum. Yeah. Great. We need you. We need you just as much as we need the women who go out into the workforce. Both are very valuable.
And it's that, you talk about that balance and like as a father as well, you know, and was single father for quite a while. Yeah. I've got a partner now again, and you see how good it is having someone else there to help.
I'm single mother as well, and I'm like, I mean, my mum and dad are my village, so I'm sort of lucky in that respect. But I can't even fathom what it must be like.
My parents live in Thailand, so it is quite difficult. Yeah. But you know, you do get these balance issues, and I mean, I still face it now. Like even with a partner and just in life, you face balance because even I'll use the last month or so as an example. Like you go, okay, well, like I had Fringe Festival come up. It's a very busy time, or just after Christmas, and so that's obviously a busy time. And you're like, well, after Fringe, we'll get that time, and I'll have that balance again. And then after that, I was like, my dog died, and had to put that down and deal with all that. And you're like, okay, well, after this, we can have a bit of time to relax. And then you're like, oh, well, fuck, actually, I've had 4 things happen, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, I got to, and just keeps on going. When I get to go to Thailand, I'll have time to relax. And I guarantee when I'm over there, I'm not going to be relaxing. I'm going to be out there. And then when I come back, and I'll be like, well, I've got to get back into things. And I was having this chat with my partner while we were walking around the lake the other day. And I said, when does it end? And I guess you end up just going, right, what is the priority? And if my priority is, hey, I need to put 2 hours extra effort into just being a dad right now, means maybe it makes that stuff harder later on, or maybe I don't get to rest right now, but I'll feel so much better for having done those 2 hours of being a dad now.
Completely. I mean, but this is why, like, you can have all of these things that are theories and academics writing about it, but what you're describing is life. It's just living it, and it's just everyone's just got to find that individual balance. So
Correct.
it's like, the stuff that's written down might not be as it's because it's just like. And also, who has time to sit there and read it? Because I had the same thing. I just went to the US and UK sort of on a media tour for all of this stuff and raising awareness and meeting with lots of different people. And I've got to be away from my little girl for three weeks.
Tough, eh?
She's 2.5. These are the golden years. Like, I cried for the first time in an interview, and I was so jet lagged, and I was so bitter. Because it's like some people might think that it's cool to go and travel like that. It's like, I'm not in that phase of life where I'd want to be doing that.
No.
Like, I want to be at home with her, because this is the golden years. I'm never going to get them back. And then also, being a single mum about it, I've got to be, you would have had this as well, because you've got to be the disciplinary, you've got to be the fun parent, you've got to be everything.
Oh, that's a tough one, yeah.
And it is, because sometimes like it gets to 7 p.m. and I'm like, I've got no more fun left.
Yeah.
But I want to be, and you've got to like dig so deep so that you can have that last little play. Whereas when there's two of you, you can
Correct.
bounce it off each other
Oh,
more.
just like, hey, even just that time for yourself. Hey, can I go for a run? I need to go for a run.
I used to be a runner. I used to do running and yoga, and I'm literally going, well, when she's in preschool, it's not good to do that. I can't. It's not feasible for me to do that yet.
So we're not painting a very good picture of having a kid. Delby, who's normally here, will be like, this is why I'm not doing it. But
this is the reality of it, is that there are sacrifices that you have to make. So for me, it hasn't been work. I've been able to keep doing work. My mum and dad helped me with that part, but the sacrifice I make at the moment is exercise, to be honest. And yes, I could do stuff in my lounge room.
yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
Like, at the end of the day,
there's
I'm pouring myself a
priorities.
drink and watching a podcast and being lazy. But
there's priorities, isn't there?
Yeah.
And that's, if you're prioritizing what you're doing.
I think you can have, it's the triangle thing. You can have two things at the same time, and then the third one. So for me at the moment, it's like motherhood and work. They're the two most important things. My social life and other interests, they're just, once she's at school as well, like, I've only got one child, so it'll be quite easy. These are the focus years.
Yeah.
And
But that seems to have been, and you touched on it before, there's no shaming a woman for choosing a career over being a mother. But it obviously, there's that side of things where there was a movement to like, well, these women, they sacrifice not only the 9 months leading in and the I guess the sickness and whatnot, but then you probably at least a year at home before they can go back to work. So there's nearly 18 months of a career that is gone.
Which is why there needed to be protections in law
Correct,
for it. Which is why, because this is just the reality of it.
But these things then get pushed too far.
Well, yeah, because a woman's 30s, like, if she's going to have children, is going to be this crazy juggling act of motherhood and work, because otherwise, if you leave it too long and you're trying to come back into it in your 40s, you've got all of the girls that are now in their 20s doing there as well, you're competing with. It is hard. There's no easy answer for it. It's just life. It's difficult. And everyone has to navigate it the best they can. Like for me, I couldn't just be a mum. I think I would go crazy like my nana did. I'd be quite bored.
Yeah.
I like having my two worlds going at the same time, even though by 7 p.m. every night, like she falls asleep. I have this thing every night. Like she'll fall asleep. I will pour myself a whiskey and be like, let's just sit down and relax. And maybe you can sit there and finally answer those emails. I take 2 sips and I'm like, I wake up every morning to
which makes
like a full whiskey just sitting on the bedside table going, oh, this is great.
Well, that makes you prioritizing doing this episode today makes it feel like a bit more special. So I do appreciate that. But yeah, parenting in itself, it's a balance, and it makes me though, and comes back to this idea of objective reality.
Yes. I
am a father now that has a child that is going to be told things, and I don't agree with them. And what are my rights as a parent to be able to suggest to a school or a society to say, no, that's not what you're going to be teaching my daughter?
Well, I think you have a lot of rights for it. I mean, I suppose you sort of touched on different conspiracies. I suppose the one that I'm the most like, this comes back to motherhood and how to play it all. Like, I'm really skeptical of this push to get kids into childcare as young as possible. Like they're constantly offering free childcare. And it's like, why don't you just let some of these mums stay home?
Yeah.
So they can mother their own children. Because what you might have some women, because we always use the examples of the teachers or lawyers, these ones with careers and professions who might want to get back there. And they're in a different income bracket, say the woman who works at Kmart is in quite a different position where she might be going back to work out of pure financial necessity. It's not the love of the work.
Yeah.
And not to say that some might not love doing it, but I'm just saying that, like, let's take a stereotype here. That, like, do we want women who have to go into sort of their lower paid jobs just to be able to put food on the table and put their children into like the system and just have them sitting on the ground amongst 30 other kids every day, not getting one-on-one attention,
and having a mother that's not at their best, they're not, and look,
and she's exhausted and she's
Correct.
tired and stressed. But wouldn't it be better rather than offering, like, give her the choice? Do you want free childcare, or do you want that subsidy just to be paid for you to be able to stay at home?
Yeah.
For the first until they're at preschool age, when we've got no choice, we've got to send them off. But yeah, I mean, I'm very like. My daughter hasn't gone to daycare or anything yet because I don't want her to be told any kind of bullshit. I'm terrified of it. Once she's got to go in, it's going to have to be finding the places, the few and far in between places that haven't been indoctrinated at the moment, because it's our government that is indoctrinated with this nonsense. So to get government funding, you have to agree to it. So what? And all it takes is one kid that their lunatic parents have gone, oh yeah, that boy is a girl or that girl's a boy, or they're non-binary. Yeah. And then all those kids in that classroom are then being gaslit. Yeah. They're not allowed to acknowledge what they can see with their own eyes. They're being taught the complete opposite of reality. And so, where do you as a parent, where do your rights come in? Now, I would say ours, of course, our rights actually have more weight than theirs. Yeah. Because we are just stating fact and reality. The onus is on them.
And especially the way
it's not how it's working at the moment, but that's how it should be in a functioning society.
Yeah, and the way we communicate that to our kids, we might say, and this is the issue, because kids don't have that nuanced understanding of exactly what we're talking about. So if I was to just say, nah, that kid is not a boy, that is a girl, they're just confused. And
they've been confused, but it's the thing of, like, with very little children, if they're confused about this, it's like the vegan cat. Like, we all know who's making the decisions there. Like, the 3-year-old is not making these decisions.
Correct.
And we've got parents who are confusing them more. That's it.
So if we have these kids in their school, and we're saying that, then they're not going to take that correctly back to school. They're going to say, oh, no, that kid's crazy. They're an idiot. And then it becomes a thing where they start bullying that poor kid. And then you're like, well, now you're contributing to some. So how do I best communicate that to my daughter? Do not judge her. Do not bully her or him or whatever it ends up being. And
I think just to state the truth, if there's a situation here that's happening that's very, very confusing and it's wrong, your instincts are right that you do know the reality of the situation. And the best thing to do is you don't have to indulge this child's delusion, but you can just be kind to them just in normal way of just being a friend to them. And because maybe that friendship will help bring them out of it
potentially.
As well. You don't want to alienate anyone.
You definitely don't want to alienate. You just want to treat other. You don't see anything. Don't see color. Don't see race. Don't see religion. Don't see sex. I just see a person. If they're a good person, and this is what I endeavor to teach my daughter, but I feel like it will be consistently in conflict with what a school or the state is teaching her. And that scares me, because then it's like she's going to get confused. She's going to be getting two different messages. I'm not going to consistently throw race into her face, how we need to treat the Indigenous Australians better or anything like that. I'm just going to say, if you see this person and they're a kind person, treat them with kindness and compassion themselves. Even if they're not, doesn't change who you are.
I think for me, my most important thing I want to do with my daughter is just teach her to think for herself. That's what my dad did for me. It was just from very early. I do have memories of when I was really young of saying something, and like Dad was like, "Don't tell me how you feel, tell me how you think." I'm 4. But what my dad was always trying to do was get me to question everything, think for yourself. And so like, because you don't want to just impose this sort of kindness on them, because then that is what was then weaponized. It's just if you think for yourself. So if something doesn't add up to you, sit there and think about why, work it out. From that, if you just think for yourself, you can usually actually get to kindness from it, because you just go, oh, hang on, okay, there's just lots of other things at play here.
Yeah.
But you don't have to just go. I mean, I completely agree with you. It's like, don't treat someone differently based on race or religion or anything like that. But if somebody is, at the same time, if someone's telling you that you have to, sit there and think about that. Because, this is all the stuff I'm very nervous about, that we're going to, there's such a divide between what schools are teaching kids and what the household is teaching kids.
And this is the issue.
Confuse them.
The state is delivering a message
I want to keep
seemingly without the permission of the people, because if they're in stealth putting these sorts of definitions of what a man and a woman are, if they're taking them out, and what's the wording that they've used? Is it?
Oh, there's no definition for woman or man in the Sex Discrimination Act anymore. There's a
at all. It's just being completely removed.
Yeah, I mean, and in the hearing.
So it's not like, okay, if you have XY chromosome.
No. And in the hearing, it was the first time the Australian Human Rights Commission did have to sit there and try and argue their position, and it was very clear that they'd never had to do that before, because it was always no debate. So they were suddenly in this position where they had to, and everyone can go, oh, they won, they must have done a good job. No. Traditional capture. But they, they spent quite a decent amount of time trying to explain in the courtroom what gender identity even was. They landed on a thought by the end of it. It was just a thought. And my barrister was like, well, discrimination law cannot come down to a thought.
Yeah.
Like that, something I can't possibly know about somebody else. And then why am I expected to care? Because as I said, like, a man can think he's a woman. Like,
I mean, even the pronoun stuff is very much like, that's very presumptuous that you think I even care to speak to you, let alone tell me how to address you first.
Yeah, I mean, the pronoun things is literally the gateway drug into this entire madness, and that's the freedom of speech element. That's the start of the freedom of speech element to it, because pronouns are an interesting thing. In our conversation here, like, we're just talking one-on-one. If you had told me that I had to refer to you as she, her, when in this conversation would that even come up?
Yeah.
I've not called you him. Because when you're talking, it would only be if there was one other person in the conversation, and so then maybe I was referring to that other person, that you would use them. So this pronouns thing and this politeness that we're supposed to have with them, it's dictating how you speak about somebody to someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. What, the plural one? They?
Yeah, I mean, it's stupid. You've got the zers, and it's so stupid. But so
questioning your own objective reality and what you can see.
They're starting to take them away now, because the zeitgeist is definitely changing. But when they would have like the pronouns at the end of an email, and it's like, but I'm never going to use your pronouns in an email to you, and I'm not calling you that when I'm talking to other people. I'm going, look at this more.
Yeah, I'm also kind to people. So my friends, if one of my friends said, like, my name's Cameron, so if one of my friends said to me, I don't like being called Cameron, call me Cam.
Yeah.
I'd do it out of respect. And I might give him a bit of shit every now and then, go, well, okay, Cameron.
Like, my name is Sally, but I go by Sal. Like, the joke's always been like, if my mum calls me Sally, I am in so much trouble. I need a lawyer. Yeah.
So if someone asks me, I know a couple of trans people, and I get along with them really well. Yeah. And if I never call them him, because I know that's just fucking rude to do. Like, I'm not a dick.
Disagree with
I'm not like, okay, cool, but I'm not an asshole. Like, if they want me to say that, I'll do that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I understand I'm doing it just to be kind to them. Also, I'm never going to say him, or I've never had to actually do it.
Yeah, okay, I get what you mean. Like, so there are some people who call themselves trans who I've become friends with throughout this whole process, and they're ones who they don't care.
Yeah.
Like they completely know. They just like, look. I mean, they're sort of older guys actually. Really good sense of humor about who they are.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not like close friends, but acquaintances. And like, if there's an opportunity where we're having a chat, I'll have a chat.
Exactly. That's
but I would never call them. I would never be friends with someone who imposed language upon me. That's as simple as that. I'm not friends with anybody who tells me how to think or what to say about them.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a friendship. Like, in terms of respect and kindness, it goes both ways. If you want to be respectful and kindful to me, don't tell me how to speak.
Correct.
So,
and I guess that's sort of, they've never asked me to do anything.
Yeah.
I've just done it out of kindness.
It was just this narrative that was sort of put on everybody of like, it's just a kindness to do it. You should do it just to be kind. But what happens then, where it ends up is, if everyone just did it without even thinking, you've then got this society that is calling all of these men she out of being kind. Then you've got, and I mean, this has happened. You've got women who have to go to court and call the rapist she, and that's where the term, like, she was raped with her penis. I'm like, what are you talking about? So that's like the worst, most traumatic place it's going to get to.
Yeah.
But also, if my barrister walked into the courtroom and was used and said, okay, she can't go into this woman-only space, well, she's given away her argument already. Like, she's given it up because she's got to argue why that she can't go into a female-only space when the only reason is he's a he. So the word's actually really important because it's the word that we're using to describe reality. So in terms of the kindness, it goes back to what I said at the very beginning. The most kind thing you can do for anybody is actually ground them in reality. That if somebody wants to, in their own mind, call themselves she, that's fine. It's not healthy, but it's their right to do it.
Yeah. But what we can do, the best thing we can do as friends and kindness and compassion is ground them in reality.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, with people who call themselves trans, be like, look, you're welcome to think however you want about yourself. You can be, if you want to be friends with me, knowing where my stance is on this, I'm happy to be friends with you, knowing your stance on this, so long as like we've got our common ground. Like I could find common ground with pretty much anyone.
Yeah.
Like all cool, but like let's not. I'm not imposing reality on you. Reality just is.
Correct.
So that's where it's also
once
different.
you're imposing your thoughts and your
like there's a difference between acknowledging reality and imposing ideology. And to say that they both actually have equal weight is incorrect.
This is what Jordan Peterson was quarrelling with, that his language was being forced.
Yeah, and he was right.
Yeah.
Like he was saying this, like 2018, I think it was. It's a long time ago. I mean, I only know about it in hindsight. I wish in 2018 I'd stumbled upon it then. Good God, life could be different.
Well, he talked about it, I think, later on, maybe years later, but he talks about how, like, the idea of something is to just do it incrementally. You sort of bring something in a little bit. Okay, that's the line. Let's bring it back a bit. Okay, well, we know where the line is now. We can push past it a little bit more and then come back, and then go past it a little bit more and come back. And you can see how this line has been slowly pushed to this absurd area where we have to acknowledge objective reality that is not
even like, I mean,
fact and true.
I call them land pronouns, but like the welcome to country
that
we all have to do. Like that was the same thing. I'm like, I literally have no problem with Aboriginal people or culture. There's a lot, like I love Aboriginal art and music. Like this is a total part of like Australia's history. I think that should be celebrated. But I think it's absolutely fucking ridiculous when you're hearing people on Zoom calls and every single person who speaks says a welcome to country. Every time I see it, I'm like, oh yeah, just like in the Dreamtime.
Yeah, and that's a really good point in the same vein of like you've just taken something that's really like at its essence a good, kind-hearted gesture and also an acknowledgement, and gone fucking too far because. I know my first few welcome to country ceremonies that I went to, and they were a sort of a special moment, and you'd be like, wow, this is awesome to see this and understand and get some heritage and culture, and experience that with some Indigenous Australians. That was great.
Yes.
And it's been pushed to a point so far where it's just nothing.
It's a virtue signal. It's completely meaningless to the point. I'm like, surely you're offended by this.
Yes.
Like, this is so stupid. Is this helping your life in any way, shape, or form? Is it making anything more accepted? I just don't think it is. No. I think it's just making a bunch of people sitting in the city feel good about themselves for doing sweet fuck all.
Yeah, definitely. But that's just another perfect example of how a good idea can just be abused and it dilutes a very real problem. We talked about it with feminism. We see it with the trans stuff, with language. It just, incrementally, bit by bit.
It definitely did. I mean, in Australia, I think Australia is actually the most captured country in the world.
I agree.
Yeah. Because
totally
you've got, not to say that other countries don't have massive problems and haven't got captured, but in, like, say, in the UK, just the pushback and there's and political dialogue and their media works really well. Like as problematic as UK tabloid media has been, because they're sort of willing to print anything, they really have elevated the other side of the voice. So it's where you can go to the UK and actually get heard.
Yeah.
Then obviously in America, I mean, the political pushback has happened. It's going to be a totally different place. Canada and Australia, like New Zealand is developing a political pushback. There's enough it's on a knife's edge, but it's there. It's happening. Canada does have the political pushback that is building.
Okay.
We don't.
Yeah.
We have nothing.
I can't see it.
We have nothing. Like, just, we've got a federal election coming up, and I don't think they have to make all of this stuff the center of a campaign.
No. Nor should they.
No, exactly. Because we all know that basically everyone's going to be going and voting based on the cost of living, effectively, of like, what's the solution here. And fine. Like that, pretty much everyone votes with money. Okay, cool. But you can actually just acknowledge that there are other problems. You can care about 1, 2, maybe even 3 things, maybe even 4, and that they could just have some kind of acknowledgement that they're going to do other things as well. Because at the moment we're like, well, what are you going to even do? Because Labor's answer to it at the moment is, we're not going to import a culture war. And you're like, but you did. You imported a culture war like 12 years ago.
Yeah.
What you're actually saying right now is we're not going to import the solution.
Yeah.
Because we're living in the culture war. Like, you can't just put your head in the sand because it's politically inconvenient for you. You actually have to go, like, this is your job to work this out.
And we touched on this with punters the other day, that the candidates will pick a culture war or an emotional response type tactic, an area in which they know, if I bring up this, welcome to country ceremonies.
Yeah.
If I'm going to bring up,
Flag.
Exactly, those sorts of things, they're going to go, right, well, yeah, that's what I'm going to vote for. But you forget all the other things they've left out. And then
I mean, because look, it seems to be they're both dipping their toes in on the women's sport is the way they're going to enter into this, which fine. I mean, if that's...
Oh, it's very easy to see that script.
Yes. I mean, so yesterday Albanese did a tweet saying, more girls are playing sport. Who are we talking about here? But more girls are playing sports, so let's build more sports grounds. And it's like, well, hang on a second.
Yeah.
The state of the sports grounds is not the issue. It's what girls are dealing with. And I'm like, and people, if anyone asks if this is even a problem, I'm just one woman who gets thousands of messages a year from parents saying, there's a boy on my daughter's sports team. I can't do anything about it. I'm going to, like, she's now getting to the age, like, they're 11. I'm going to have to pull her out. For her safety, she can't play rugby. Yeah. Like, I'm just not going to put her in that dangerous situation, and no one's listening to them. So it's like, if anyone's like, oh, is there an issue here? Oh no, there 100% is an issue. Yeah. And even if it was only one girl, I'm like, that would actually still be an issue. Yeah. Because, I mean, one broken neck is one too many. And if you flip it, when they were doing the amendments, it's not like they stopped and went, well, how many people is this really for? Because who really cares about this? No, they did it. So they were quite happy to go and change the laws for this tiny group of people that it impacts so many. So no, I'm sorry, you're going to have to change them back because of the 50% of the population that it impacts. But it's not just 50, it's 100%. Because everybody is allowed to have freedom of speech, belief, and association. And men are also should be able to go without fear of punishment. That's a man.
Well, that's the issue I find with this new hate speech law that's been brought in. Gosh. Because me, as a public commentator, you're in the same space. Yep. The vague terms, the reckless, the political opinion, that really scares me. I don't want to go to jail as a father.
So I did a free speech union event on Thursday night, and it was one of the questions I got asked. They were like, oh, how far are you willing to fight that? And I was like, look, we've all got one litigation in us, I think. Like, please. I'm like, I don't know if I can do this, but I keep my house really clean because I'm absolutely petrified about police turning up one day to arrest me. Like, it is an actual fear I have that they're going to arrive and go, Miss Grover, you've called a man one too many times. You're going to have to come down to the station.
Well, we do it on the podcast all the time. I say there's men and there's women. Yeah. Like, there's nothing controversial about that.
Because in these new laws, because obviously they're bringing them in, under the guise of anti-Semitism, which we're all against. I'm very against anti-Semitism. However, simultaneously, I do actually want to know who the anti-Semites are so that we can stay away from them. And you can punish them for other things. It's not the speech. Yeah. That's not the bad part. It's if they do other crimes. Like, I'm as pretty much a free speech absolutist as you can get. Yeah. And I just, because then in these vilification, these hate laws, they're changing the definitions of harm, of violence. And at the very bottom of everything, it's gender identity and HIV status. And you're like, I'm sorry, what's the hate speech again with HIV status? What do you mean? It's not even explained. I don't even know, but it's there.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Even the caravan, for example, and how that's, well, and it was been exposed now that it was fake.
Yeah.
Very obviously was fake. No one leaves the addresses and the plot on paper with the explosives in the caravan. That was so obvious. But then it was used to shove this law down. And that, when they say was faked by criminals to distract, I even would go a step further and go, was it just the government or the state themselves faking a plot?
Look, I hate conspiracies. I hate everything about them. But I will say this. Once you're in a position, and this is what the state is going to have to grapple with.
Yeah.
Once you're in a position where the state is forcing you to believe men or women, trust is gone. I have no trust in these people anymore.
Do they believe it, do you think?
No.
Like,
I don't think a single
like
person
Albanese,
believes
for example.
No.
But he'll push it.
Yes. I don't think he believes it. I don't think there's a single one. I don't think that there is a single person on the planet that thinks men are women. Not one.
Yeah.
I think that there are opportunists. I think there's a lot of people that are fearful of the pushback.
Yeah.
There's people that see the opportunity for power by saying it. Like some people, that's all they care about. I mean, if we're seeing anything, there's more narcissists and sociopaths out there than we ever thought possible. No, I don't think a single one of them believes it. It's just what's politically opportunistic for them. And because it's not that the citizens in Australia aren't pushing back and want change on this issue. It's just, as you said, it's 90%. It's higher than that. I mean, it is like it's getting as close to 100% as you could possibly get. But the issue is our media. Our media is so captured. We have a very small mainstream media pool, and they are all in on this issue. So there's the thousands upon thousands of voices that could be elevated every single day and not. Like if you only read The Guardian and ABC, you have no idea that
Not
there
a
is
clue.
a problem. No idea. You are just getting fed fluff pieces every day of how kind and virtuous you are for eating bullshit.
Well, I started following extreme left publishers. For example, Washington Post. I started following them just to get another. And there's not like an objective, I guess, point of view. It is just the opposite for the sake of being the opposite. And you're like, oh, okay. Well, can we find someone who might call Trump out on this, this, and this from an objective point of view and go, well, this is wrong because of this, and not be like, bang, it's wrong.
Completely that way. Like I was so late to this issue in part because like I was in that like how the fuck did he get elected bubble. Yeah. Because I would have always considered myself to be on the left, probably center left, but like always the left leaning side of it. And I'd lived in America from 2009 to 2018.
I was going to ask because I can hear a hint of an accent all the time.
It's not even that my spelling is worse. I can't even.
Oh, really?
Because I was a writer, so I had to. And there was lots of words, so I had to give up the spell. I can't even remember it anymore.
Yeah.
everything with a Z. I know
So how long? Like 9-10 years?
Yeah, almost 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I was just very much in that like, I love Obama and how the hell is Trump winning world? And I never tweeted or anything. I was just a reader of it. So there was like journalists and comedians who I would follow, and I just sort of read them throughout the day. And I have since learned that they were asking the wrong questions because us all going like, how did he get elected? Now it's very obvious to me how he got elected.
Very obvious.
But not one of those people were ever going, oh, maybe there's something happening that people are not happy with.
Yeah.
And maybe we should actually take that seriously. And they're not bad people. They're actually really good people who just want
Even if he's not the answer,
I'm not a
which
fan
he might not be the answer, but he's played the answer card.
That's exactly. Like, I'm not a fan of him as a person.
Yeah.
What I do have respect for is that he did see a political win and took it.
Yeah.
And that's what I wish that there were politicians who we just played the game.
Well,
better.
we all know that there's corruption. We know that the drain the swamp idea.
Yeah.
Someone does need to drain the swamp.
Yeah.
Whether or not he's actually doing that or not. I mean, I feel
We'll see.
I'm optimistic, but
Yeah, we'll see. Like
you never know,
Yeah,
like-
you never know. Like you just like. I mean, at the end of the day, how much trust do we put in any of these
Exactly,
people? It's like
yeah.
I just think that there are some people like if you go to like the quite extreme MAGA sort of people.
Yeah.
It's like where it's like you're getting quite cult-like about this as well, and sort of quite dogmatic and treating him as sort of this like.
yeah. I'm trying not to be
deity.
delusional about
Yeah, it's like no,
everything.
he is just a human being that's as flawed as any other human being.
Yes.
So no, it's just there is one policy he has that I respect, and anyone who is like, how could you even, support him on it? It's like, I wish the other side had done it. They didn't.
Yeah.
Like, it would be really cool if the side that you agree with on most other issues was the one who fixed this problem. But you know what? They're not going to because they caused it. Like in Australia, Labor is not going to fix the gender issue because they brought it in. Julia Gillard is not going to get up there and I wish she would. I would respect her so much and go, fucked up, guys. Really sorry. Let's help you get it back.
Yeah.
Mark Dreyfus, who's the current Attorney General, he was the Attorney General when they brought in the amendments. He really wanted them there. He's not going to turn around and go, whoopsie. No.
Yeah.
It's little, and like, to her credit, Pauline Hanson is standing there in the background, jumping up and down, trying to do as much as possible. They're not listening to her, to their own detriment. But the Liberals are the ones that are going to have to do this politically.
So, how important is your case in regards to setting precedent and what it means for laws going forward in Australia?
I mean, so. At the moment, I mean, like it's very important. It's not just in Australia; it is worldwide because of that CEDAW part of it, of what we're defending. And the judge has gone so broad that any country that is a signatory of CEDAW can go and interpret.
What is? Because you mentioned it before, I didn't quite know what's CEDAW.
So what happens is the UN has all these different treaties and conventions that member states sign, and then once you've signed them, you basically sort of have to enliven it. You put that into your law. And it's one of the ways that countries make laws. So if they're not specifically voted on, you have it's called the external affairs power and other stuff. I'm very layman here in my explanation and understanding.
Well.
But basically, if it's working well, when I found out about all of this, it's actually quite a cool thing to keep everybody in check, of making sure that there's sort of no countries are going completely rogue, that we're all agreeing on really basic things and or like how we're going forward with different things. So in the late 1970s, the UN created this convention, CEDAW, which was this document, and it's a really beautiful document that basically was this plan, this way to protect women and girls legally in just society, in the workplace, in school, things like that, to get women to a place where they were basically had just equal rights in society to men, because we didn't. And so Australia signed it in 1983, and so in 1984 we enlivened it in law with our Sex Discrimination Act. And so what's quite unique about our law is that we really did take CEDAW and sort of effectively copy and paste it and put it into our legislation and create legislation from it. So we're in quite a good position to defend it. And as I said earlier, CEDAW, the convention is not arguing that men are women. It is arguing that woman and girl is a distinct class of human beings separate from men and boys. In fact, it actually wants to stop. There's parts of the convention that want to stop any what they would call sex-based stereotypes, because that's essentially what they all are. It's like that we could move past all that. Like that's actually being progressive. That a woman wouldn't be, say, punished if she didn't wear a dress, that she could wear pants. And so this is why the other side
the
of
social
that
constructs are
that a
understandable.
man, we could be in a movement where we're just breaking down the barrier that men could wear skirts if they wanted to. And they do in Scotland.
Yeah.
It could happen. It's not that bizarre that it's something that would become kind of normal if it was just clothes were just clothes.
Yeah, clothes, yeah.
But anyway, so
But the lines get blurred.
So with our case, as I said, it was the first case that ever came up that was the direct conflict of gender identity of sex. Like when they're both in legislation together, which one has more weight? So the judge has currently interpreted it as gender identity has more weight in the Sex Discrimination Act than sex. He is obviously wrong.
Yeah.
In fact, I've not had someone, I've had quite a few legal scholars or whatnot call me after reading it going like, it's just nonsense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's complete nonsense. But he took the AHRC's interpretation of the law and ran with that. The AHRC are wrong. They're not an Australian Human Rights Commission at this point in time. They are an ideology commission. If you don't agree with the ideology that the Australian Human Rights Commission is pushing, they will punish you. And that would be across the Sex Discrimination Commission, the Race Discrimination Commission, the Human Rights Commission itself. That's not what part I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with the Sex Discrimination Commissioner. That one is working as close to as functioning as possible. But a lot of the others have really been corrupted. And so that's the institutional capture that is the number one concern that we have to fix. But so with our case, so the AHRC, Sex Discrimination Commissioner, has just been approved to intervene again. So they're coming back to the party, which, welcome, bring all your crazy to the yard. So what's also quite unique about this case, it does get stupider. So I'm obviously appealing the decision, but so is Tickle. So he's appealing the decision he won.
I don't understand. One didn't win well enough?
Yeah, that's basically so I got told that I'd done, the decision was indirect gender identity discrimination, which for trans activists is actually a better outcome for them because it means that you can punish anyone, even if they didn't know that you had a gender identity. So it's very sinister.
Yeah.
I didn't know that he had a gender identity, nor do I care.
Yeah.
He's a male human being. He's a man. And as I said, he can think whatever he wants about himself. I wish him well.
Yes.
Just don't come into female spaces in sport. So he is cross-appealing. He wants indirect discrimination upgraded to direct discrimination. He wants the damages upgraded from $10,000 to at least $30,000, and he wants aggravated damages of $10,000. So,
because that extra $30,000 is just going to solve all these problems.
But so with damages are supposed to come from the actual, like the damage done by the alleged discrimination. But, I removed this person from an app that's not currently online. I couldn't put him back on there if I wanted to. I'm not on it. Like, it will be back online in the future, but when you get taken to court, like, you take it offline. Like, I can't run my platform. The damages I had to pay were because, during cross-examination, his barrister was trying to establish that there was this candle that had been created for fundraising that just someone who's a supporter had made and wanted to try and establish that I had done it. So basically, Tickle had done an interview on SBS Insight where he had said that he hated the smell of male changing rooms. Someone, I don't know who, had created a meme of that, like a cartoon meme saying, I hate the smell of sweaty balls, hate them.
Yeah, okay.
Someone else had then turned that into a candle, which I'm not sure. I said the other night that they were fundraising with that. I'm actually not sure if they were or if they were just selling it. I don't know if any of that even contributed to the crowdfund. Needless to say, I had nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
But in cross-examination, it was like the barrister was trying to establish that I had sold like hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of sweaty balls candles to fund the case, and that it was all me. And so it was so bewildering. And you're in this very stressful, high-stakes situation. You're sitting in federal court being cross-examined. Like it's a monumental occasion that you sort of never forget, hopefully a once-in-a-lifetime thing. And she asked me to turn to the court book to see the sweaty ball candle, and I burst out laughing. Just being met with this sweaty balls candle, just the image of it, I laughed. And then, I laughed, for a shorter amount of time and less than you just did right then. Like, it was just like a laugh, and then, like, compose yourself as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And she's yelling, she's like, are you laughing, Miss Grover? And I was like, well, yes, I'm sorry. It's just,
It's quite funny.
It is the magnitude of the situation. When federal court, and you're asking me to look at a sweaty balls meme, like, how did we get here?
Yeah.
$10,000.
So you got fined for that?
Well, it's not fine. It's just damages, like apparently like some sort of like distress or whatever that would cause the applicant. But the thing is, you actually can't. Like, this is a free speech issue because damages are supposed to be based on the claim. Like, I mean, not your conduct in court. Like, that could have been a misconduct thing if you'd wanted me to. But again, it's like, this is an involuntary human reaction.
Response,
that I am having. Like, how many instinctual things are you going to punish me for? See a man, can't do that, can't laugh, like just sit in the corner and like do nothing, Miss Grover. So obviously we're appealing that, but I mean, he wants it upgraded to $30,000. I mean, aggravated damages. I mean, their argument is basically, because I go and talk about the case, that's mean. I mean, buckle up. I mean,
Corey White says that laughter is the most unbiased vote that you can hear. Like, he'll say something on the stage. You can be hating what he's saying. If you're laughing, he wins.
Yeah, like I mean, it just was, I suppose. And there's been so many times in this whole process that if you didn't laugh, you'd cry. Like, I've always really tried to keep a sense of humor about it so that you don't go crazy, because it is absurd. You're having the government sort of force this nonsense onto you. So you have to sort of find your way to keep.
But you said before that you felt like some of these commissions had been corrupted.
Oh, without
Do you mean like corrupted by fear and just like they're just falling in line what they think they have to, or do you mean genuinely corrupted to divide?
Corrupted. I think that there would be some people in there there'd be some who would be fearful. I'm sure there are some in there that are trying to stop the sinking ship. But for the most part, no. I mean, the gender activists weren't stupid. Like, they had a plan. This is all documented. There's lots of people who have gone and done the history of it. That they literally did have the plan to just go and infiltrate different organizations and institutions, and that's how they would get this stuff in there. Like, it's not by accident. And so, they're all there. I mean, you don't accidentally assign a sex discrimination commissioner that thinks sex is unimportant. That's not an accident.
Something's just occurred to me. I don't know. It's hilarious. I don't know how we're here. I literally put out a post yesterday or the day before, a couple of days ago, saying I don't know how to navigate my influence on fueling further division and hate in the world. And the first guest I get on after that post, we talk nothing about the most divisive topic.
Australia's number one bigot. Here I am in all her glory.
And it's humour. It's like, for me, that's like the universe going, oi, like I've given you a role. Just keep doing it. Navigate it however the fuck you can.
But you have to, like, trans activists are the least humorous people you'll ever, in existence. They have an inability to laugh at themselves. I mean, a man wearing lipstick, calling himself a woman, and like walking around saying, "I'm Lily." I mean, it is actually inherently funny. Yeah, it is funny. Like, we laugh at them, and we know that. Margaret Atwood had the quote decades ago that the greatest fear of men is that women will laugh at them, and women's greatest fear for men is that they'll kill us. Yeah. So they've created this demographic where all we're going to do in response to them is laugh at them, and that they cannot handle that.
And you see it. Even like back in the day when we used to have our footy player reviews, the biggest laugh of the night is when one of the lads gets dressed up as a girl and does the
thing that guys do,
mimes the Cher song. If I could do, like, what if we did that last year?
Such a crazy thing that guys have always had this thing, like, women don't do that. Like, don't pretend to be men. Like you don't go to like a hen's night or something and like have like a bunch of women pretend to be men. Like, obviously they get drag queens in, so it's always been like the men in the dresses. And like, I used to find drag queens quite fun. I find it quite tedious at this point. But when I used to live in West Hollywood, I used to go to drag queen bingo pretty regularly. The happy hour was fantastic.
Yeah.
But no, I think if you fall into the trap of like, oh my God, are we, just by talking about things, are we fueling division? No, that's exactly how they want you to think, so you don't talk about it anymore. Yeah. And we're not going to get anywhere if we don't talk about it. The response to censorship or to any sort of divisive or complicated or scary issue is not to talk about it less.
Yeah.
It's to talk about it more and work it out. And we would be in such a different position in Australia if the media had actually let discussions about this happen.
Well, this is exactly the
Yeah.
point, because healthy reflection on what you've been saying, what you're doing, that's great. But, you know, the very fact that I even considered, like, well, do I stop talking about certain things, I was like, fuck, no, that is not the answer. Seeing the responses we got back and messages and comments, silencing our thoughts is not the answer.
No, and we don't have anywhere else. We need more of it in Australia. Like, we need healthier, like, podcasts like this. We need more and more and more of it.
Yeah.
We need more conversations, like doing it every single day.
Well, also, I think another side of the answer is potentially, and I said this in the post, I think the way forward is also getting people on we very, very, we're in a lot of opposition against, and have a great dialogue.
Without it, I would go on to every single platform that is completely against me. I don't care how hostile they want to be with me. I am so sure in my argument and that what I'm saying is right. I know I could hold my own.
Yeah.
They can push back as much as possible. I welcome it. They will not speak to me. The only one who has, to his credit, was Josh Zepps.
Yep.
He had me on his podcast, probably never again.
Okay. Yeah.
But it was great. Like, he pushed back a lot, and I was able to sit there and state my case, and I think show why what he was saying is wrong. I think it was a really interesting conversation. Some of those conversations are much more interesting than two people that are just high-fiving going, yeah, we're right, I totally agree.
Well, punters, for example, politics, very left-leaning, and I'm probably right-leaning if you're going to put us in categories. I don't like to be put in it, but if you're going to, we had a great conversation, and I think that's what you got to get people who oppose the views of each other and find a nice, happy medium, a way forward.
Like, I even think that if I was to sit there and have a proper conversation with even the most diehard trans activist, I could find the humility, I could find something in common that we had to go, okay, here, this is something we agree on. Let's focus on that for a second to see that we're not different species. Because, I mean, there is this tribalism that has happened, and I think in a way it's probably happened because... I mean, when there's less religion now. I don't think that's a bad thing. Like, I'm gold star atheist over here. I don't think the solution now is to bring in more religion. I think it is that, this is a real Renaissance sort of time, like the Enlightenment. Like, it happened a few hundred years ago. They actually gave us all the tools then, and we've never properly implemented it.
No.
That rather, like, you've got some people going, oh, maybe we need to go get more Christianity. No, you don't. You don't defeat one ideology with another. What you do is you defeat them all with critical thinking, with free speech, with freedom of belief, freedom of association, with, like, just people being able to think for themselves and express themselves.
Well, I think Christianity, for example, has pushed people away from Jesus more than anything, and his ways of thinking and the way what he preached was beautiful.
Yeah,
like, love others and treat others as you want to be treated. Like,
totally. If you're going to just use it as a philosophy, which I mean, it's a lot of it. It's sort of based on Greek philosophy anyway. Like, it's all there. You can do it. It's just the moment anything becomes dogmatic, you're in a really dangerous situation, and it just doesn't work.
Correct. Dogmatic, organized religion, I think, has done more damage to people's spirituality or their peace than anything.
Yeah, and so it just, like, I mean, I used to be a huge Hitchens fan. Like, that was sort of back in the early 2000s. Like, I was, I was studying philosophy when, like, the Hitchens and Dawkins and Sam Harris and all those guys, like, really came up.
Alan Watts is my go-to.
Cool.
Yep.
So I I remember what Hitchens used to say in, like, every speech he did. He'd be like, what's this much more awe-inspiring than, like, a burning bush? It's just you look through the Hubble telescope. Like, that is the most awe-inspiring thing that you can think of, and it is, and that is very spiritual. Like, the experiences that you can have when you listen to music and art and culture and all of these different things.
When you zoom out and just realize how almost unimportant you are to the grand scheme of things, but because your perspective is here, you are the most important as well. It's this everything and nothing concept that I'm battling with. You are everything and nothing.
Yeah, I whenever I get overwhelmed, and, like, sometimes, like, throughout this process, it's been 3 long, boring, stressful years. Sometimes, like, I will, just you have that moment you have to sort of ground, like, put your feet on the ground, take deep breaths, and do that thing. You know, like you see those videos where they like, you know, they're panning out from the globe and
Correct.
and then it's going to like the sun and
Yeah.
so and you sit there going like, I am but a mere speck.
Yeah, I am nothing.
I am but a mere speck. What I am doing is I am just trying to make my life as good as it can possibly be, and my daughter's life, make sure she has rights and provide for her, and you know, care for the people around me, and then I'll shuffle off this mortal coil and whenever
That's
I do.
exactly it.
Yeah.
I just always go back to that. You are everything. You are nothing.
Yeah.
You
Embrace
are
it. It's sort of, it's so
You're it.
liberating. Yeah. Once you sort of, when you go like, when you sort of just do realize that, where you're like, like I'm not the be all and end all. Also, not everyone's going to like me. Like I remember when I was 17 and my auntie told me that. She's like, one day you'll realize that not everyone likes you, and it's a really liberating feeling. And I was like, what?
Well, it's just a
And
matter
then
of
now it's really nice.
it's just a matter of perspective, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like you look at you can look at one clip of Donald Trump,
Yeah.
very polarizing figure.
Mm-hmm.
One clip, and it will be looked at by the right in one way, and looked
Yeah.
at on the left in another way, and you're
Yeah.
like, it's the same situation,
Yes.
two different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is the same thing.
Yeah. Oh.
So the only thing that has affected what you feel about that situation is your perspective on the situation.
I can post something to Twitter, and I can get within 30 seconds someone saying, "You are amazing. I agree with you. You're a hero," and
Yeah.
someone saying, "Die, bigot, scum."
Yeah, this
Off
was
the exact same thing.
I truly believe, like, if like I'm a bit more, I'm opposite of you in the atheistic. I'm more of a like, I'm definitely of some belief in some sort of divine consciousness, something. But if I was to go down that path of like, okay, this is the universe testing me. This last 2-3 weeks has been a like
Yeah.
testing how much, how much am I willing to stay to my truth? And this is aligned perfectly because this is a conversation that where I was thinking about it. I was going, do I want to have these conversations anymore? And as soon as given this opportunity to speak to you, I went, no. These are important conversations. These need to happen. Don't let someone silence
Completely.
your thoughts.
There has been times like 'cause the other side part of the court case that's been so crazy is it's hundreds of thousands / $1 million that I have to pay. I've got to raise it. Like I don't have $1 million sitting in the bank just in case someone takes me to court for saying he's a man. So I've had to raise the money. It's like it's amazing through the just the support and goodwill of people all around the world who have supported me and helped crowdfund. And there have been times where it has been like I've been in the fetal position on the floor, hysterical, just going, "This is really hard. This is unfair. Like, why? Like I shouldn't have to do this. Like we all know what a woman is. The law has to reflect reality. Like this is like legislators' jobs. Like it should never have been left up to me. I've gotten angry. I've gotten sad." And it tests you where you go like, it tests you who you are as a person. And then you have that moment. It's like, okay, life actually isn't all fun and games. It's not getting what you want. It's not having everything easy all the time. It's not given to you. This is the test to see how much do you actually care about what you believe in.
Yeah.
Because if I just walked away right now, this was the thing when I had the AHRC complaint. Like I could have settled there and been like, "Oh, yeah, sorry, ma'am. Sir, you are 100% right. I've been so bad. I'm such a naughty woman. Here's some money.
Yeah.
Please forgive me." I could not live with myself for the rest of my life. How could I look my daughter in the eye and she went, "Oh, so like," if then someone was trying to intimidate her, what would I tell her to do? What would I do when the next hard thing came along? Would I just try and find the easy way out of it?
Yeah.
No. This was the thing of like, oh, okay, here's the challenge of like, okay, who am I really? What do I actually really care about? And it turns out, truth and reality, and freedom of speech really is my North Star in all of this.
It has to be for everyone.
Because while obviously I got brought into this through women's rights and female-only spaces, and they are 100% my driving force, but we can't even talk about them without freedom of speech.
Well, our right to be wrong.
Yeah.
And
the
be
right to
educated.
the right to not listen. Like you can just if you hate what I'm saying, you can just turn it off. Like I'm not forcing it upon anyone. Like that's why freedom of speech is so important. That's why I am an absolutist. I in the sense that I'll give you defamation, but the bar has to be really high. I think that people can pretty much people say People call me racist. What, am I going to go and take every which one of them to court? No, I'll just prove it in society that I'm not.
This is it. Be the example of the person you want to be. Yeah.
You know, incitement to violence. I think people cannot listen. I think that if you go and commit violence, you should be punished for committing violence. I don't.
This is what Delby argues as well. Delby's like, we have to have a certain amount of resilience and self-accountability.
Because the problem is, and we're seeing it now, because while there's so much I don't like to hear, I really don't like to hear all of the anti-Semitism that's especially been out there since October 7. I really don't like it. However, the alternative is that they will stop us from saying anything. And that is scarier. You've got to sometimes hear the bad stuff, turn it off, close the browser down, walk away from it, and get yourself away from the stuff you don't want to hear, rather than anyone have control over what another human being can say.
This is the argument we had with Marty Shoegold and what his comments were on the radio. And I had this chat with Alana Jukic. Is
he the one, because I was in the UK, was he the radio,
Correct.
About the Matildas?
Yes, yeah.
So this is absurd.
Yeah.
That he has been punished like this.
Yeah.
Absurd.
It's ridiculous.
You can say he should be able to have an opinion or even tell a joke or whatever.
Correct.
And how all of the politicians that were just making these stances and no, I'm sorry, you've got men in women's sport and change rooms, and you do not sit here and tell me you give a shit about women's sport.
Yeah.
Not at all. What you wanted in that situation was an opportunity to go and use someone as an example that if you say something out of line, we will punish you.
Yeah. That's exactly what we were getting at. It's look, you cannot agree with his comments. He's a bit of like, and Delby was like, I think he's a dickhead. I don't find him funny at all, but he's allowed to say that.
Totally. This is the thing. Like, free speech only matters if you're defending the stuff you don't agree with.
And as a father of a daughter, I said I'd use that and go, look at that guy.
Yeah.
Use that as motivation. Go fucking prove him wrong.
Yeah. No, totally. It's just like, I want to know who says the stuff that I disagree with. Do you know what? I want to know who the misogynists are in society.
Yeah.
That's actually very helpful for safeguarding so that we know to stay away from them. I need to know who are the men who hate women. I'm not saying that this is them. I need to know who the men are that hate women so much so that I do everything I can to have barriers from them and keep away from them. It's that simple. If you go and make them all they have to walk around like robots, they can't say anything. I don't know until it's too late that I am in a bad situation with a bad guy.
And then you'll get the overcorrection like we see. Like young men are overwhelmingly becoming conservative, which, look, whether that's right or wrong, who cares? Like, you shouldn't be pushed one way or the other. It should be just be who you are.
Do you know what? Like, and this even brings about the through line of this whole conversation of feminism. There's never, for lack of a better phrase, there's never been sort of like a meninism. Like, women have spent the last 100 years and change challenging our roles in society, working out what we need, sometimes going too far, sometimes not getting it right, making mistakes. That's all part of politics and movements and life and growth and progress. But women have been doing it. Men haven't been. And I don't buy women just won't let us. Shut up. Yes, we will. I think there needs to, because at the moment what we're seeing is these young boys are finding like the likes of Andrew Tate.
Yep.
This is not good.
Yeah, he's the extreme.
He's the extreme.
And what gets confused with him is like he'll chuck something up that's very insightful, very smart.
Oh, broken clock is right twice a day. Yeah.
And then he'll go, he'll be like, oh.
Yeah. Oh, he knows what to say to reel them in.
Yeah.
100%. It's all very rational to reel them in.
Yeah.
So, but there needs to be proper, I'm going to say... men's rights movement. So there you go. They're going to clip that and say she's a men's rights activist. But I mean, we talk about women's rights. Men do have rights. There are some specific rights to men, or let's say needs, and it shouldn't be shameful to be able to talk about them, or that men want to just talk about them amongst themselves and work things out of what it is men actually need and challenging what's their role in society. Women's role has changed. Where are men coming into this? It's like if there is a divide at the moment because I don't think there's been this big collective reflection on it. Sometimes I just see it online. There's a lot of complaining, but I'm like, but what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Like, let's do something. Like, what's the action here?
Yeah.
Because I think, like, you see online all the time, these men going, like, feminism destroyed everything and these women who just want jobs. It's like, okay, you know what? Just don't try and marry those women. They're obviously not for you.
Yeah, well, I'd call you a feminist, but I would put you in the rational.
I wouldn't. But I mean, it's not a label I require. I
No.
think it's an action. So I'm kind of very anti-labels at this point.
Yeah.
But I think that it's like if you're a man who wants wants to marry a woman who's going to be a stay-at-home wife and mother, go find one who wants that. Like, they're out there. And if you are a man who wants this woman who you're both going to be out there, navigating the professional world together, go find her. Like, that's just dating. Like, they sort of sometimes I think that they're like overcomplicating this of like, oh, there's no one for me. It's like, there's someone for everyone. Go find them. Work out what it is you want and then go and find that person. You don't have to make it this whole big problem of women having rights really destroyed everything. No, it didn't.
Yeah.
It really didn't.
I do look at the sort of mid to low 30s women who are championing their women's rights, saying they've been oppressed their whole life, and you're like, well, maybe potentially the couple of generations.
This is such a hard and nuanced conversation, though, because it's like those ones and a lot of them are talking about is it's because it's the sex workers work one sort of saying it or something, and you're like, well, you really haven't been oppressed. However, right now, we're not defined in law. Like when I was in the UK, I had dinner with an Aussie journalist and talking about stuff, and he was like talking about all of these different politicians that he's meeting with, who these are people who never even email me back, and I was just like, Jesus Christ, like of course they'll email you.
Yeah.
And which like great for him, but I was just like, and we sort of said something about like, oh, there is quite a bit of misogyny out there at the moment. He's like, really? Do you think? And I'm like, dude, we're not in law. Like, there is a problem at the moment. Like, our rights have actually been taken away. I do not legally have the right to say no to a man in the event that man claims to have an identity. So, to be fair, nor do you. Like, this is really, really dangerous, but it becomes very dangerous, especially for women and girls.
What's the way forward from here? With
the case, from my part that I'm doing for it is, so we will have we've got the interlocutory hearing on the 7th of April, which that's kind of the money fight, because on top of the damages, he's going after me for costs. So he wants me to pay. We were told always it was pro bono. Yeah. Now it's apparently $400,000 in legal fees.
Yeah. Anyway.
So, and then he wants costs for the next round. No, we're in public interest litigation. There's massive issues in law here that have to be worked out. Each side pays their own. I'm not going after him for any money. Yeah. I'm not trying to bankrupt this person. I'm not trying to destroy his life. Go live it, flourish. I wish you well. So that's going to be a big fight on the 7th of April. And then the actual hearing of the appeal will be in August. Usually, and it's to the full federal court. So there's 3 federal court judges. You've just got to get 2 of them to side with you. Great if we get all 3. Usually an appeal to the full federal court is 1 day, but because there's a cross appeal, it's blowing it out. It'll be 3 or 4.
Okay.
We'll get a decision probably around December. It's at the end of the year. So if Giggle wins, we will have finally established that sex has weight in law over gender identity when it's sex that matters, and female-only spaces are a special measure for the equality of women in society. And we've got the precedent there. So say Lesbian Action Group, who's based in Melbourne, who have been wanting to do lesbian-only events. The AHRC told them they can't. They have to include heterosexual men who claim to be women. They would be able to cite Giggle v. Tickle and go, no, we can go and have these. The precedent's been there. But it wouldn't clean up the entire mess, but it would set a precedent.
Yeah, which is super important.
Yes. So then that being said, the other side could take it to the High Court. So if we win this round, the other side would be the one applying to the High Court. If they win this round, it would be us. And I would take it to the High Court. It's always been my intention to.
Yeah.
We would... So you have to appeal to the High Court. The High Court is an error in law court. So in the federal court, you're still dealing with sort of the he said, she said facts of the case. In this, we've got the facts of the case that are in dispute, and also there's law that's in dispute. So that's the appeal we're doing at the moment. By the time you get to the High Court, and why we had to go to this step before going to the High Court, is because there were facts that were in dispute. Once you get there, it's just law.
Yeah.
It's very, very dry and boring. So it will just be law that's in dispute. So essentially, we would be going there saying, look, an error in law has occurred because sex has been given no weight in the Sex Discrimination Act. Got a pretty strong argument there.
Yeah.
If it's his side going, they would be going saying, say, because we've won, so they're taking it there, they would be arguing effectively there's an error in law that's happened because sex has been given weight in the Sex Discrimination Act. So I think as the further we get into this, I think we're getting into a stronger and stronger position. I also think the political zeitgeist has completely changed.
Yeah.
I think like the train has left the station and it's not going back. I don't think that some people on the other side realize that yet.
So basically,
it's changed.
Broadly, the terms of identity and sex have been put under the same.
Yeah, they put gender.
law?
Yeah, they put gender identity into the Sex Discrimination Act, and the thing is that you don't actually even need it there because every single person is actually protected by sex-based rights. Like, if you want to talk about the most inclusive way to do this, it's sex-based rights because everyone has a sex, whether they're trying to reject it or not. Everyone has one, and say the women who are claiming to be men, who are causing less problems but not none. They rely very much on their sex-based rights because, I mean, the only time we ever hear about these trans men is when they're pregnant, and so they're going to need those sex-based rights when the pregnant man comes into the room.
Yeah.
But then also you've got all these sort of neo-genders, the non-binaries or the cloud genders or whatever. I mean, at the end of the day, society is not structuring themselves around this.
No.
They also rely on their sex-based rights.
Yeah.
The only group of people that is benefiting from gender identity being in law is men who claim to be women, because then they suddenly get these privileges to take away women's rights and go into women's spaces in sport.
Yeah, which is not safe.
No, because see, women who claim to be men aren't going into men's sport.
And
They're just not.
And I'm not even claiming from the dangers in the change rooms side of things. I'd be just, a man is bigger, stronger. They've got higher bone density. There's a range of factors that I don't want my daughter playing against a grown man.
Peter Fitzsimons, that moron, he's always out. Oh, he hasn't done it as much lately, but there was a time when he was going on and on about like inclusivity. You've got to let trans women in women's sports, and I would always challenge him and being like, why aren't you advocating for trans men in the Wallabies?
Yeah.
So we know why, because you know that they'd get killed. It would completely, like, no other man on that field would be able to play to his full capacity because suddenly there's a female on there and they would kill her. Like, I watch women's rugby. These are strong women.
Yeah.
But I watch men's rugby too, and these are strong men. There's a reason they don't play together.
Correct.
So it's playing. So women like even the women who claim to have a gender identity, when it comes down to sports and things, they actually do rely on their sex-based rights. So there's only this one demographic, which is the men claiming to be women, who are getting anything from this. So it's just it literally isn't working. Gender identity, if you need it in law at all, I would argue you don't, because if a man was going to be, say, discriminated against, like fired for wearing a dress, or I mean, that's a kind of another topic. But if there was going to be something that he was going to be disadvantaged by being punished because he was wearing a dress, that is a sex-based issue, because it would be sex-based discrimination, because it's a sex-based stereotype that he's a man, he can't wear a dress. But he is a man, he can wear a dress. Yeah. He should be able to. Yeah. So you don't even need gender identity in there to protect his rights, to actually express himself how he wants. Yeah. That's why the whole thing was a nonsense from the start. So I'm doing my bit to get it. Hopefully, the High Court. If we got to the High Court with it, which I mean, there's a chance that that's where it will end up. I've always been told that that's probably where it's going to end up. By the end, we win in the High Court, and the High Court says this gender identity doesn't work here. Then we could go and lobby the politicians. We'd have the mandate, very strong mandate to do it. Yeah. So this is just. We know
it's a long process.
We know that eventually we're going to win. Yeah. Gender identity will be out of the Sex Discrimination Act at some point. Yeah. It is just a very long process. How long is it going to take? How much work?
And of all the prime ministers that could have done it, it was a woman, Julia Gillard.
Not only that, she did it. I mean, this was effectively happening while she was making that misogyny speech.
That's so.
She has dined out
the irony
over 10 years on being Australia's first female prime minister. And knowing what misogyny is, and it was gaslighting.
Now, whether it was intentional or unintentional.
Look, I could give her the benefit of the doubt that she didn't realise that she just heard, oh, be kind, put them in. Yeah, cool, okay. But at the same time, it hasn't worked out that way. You were Prime Minister. It was your government. Yeah. You've got to take responsibility for it. Because you know what? It is your job as legislators to sit there and work through legislation to see all the different ways it could play out, they should know. And if they had just put gender identity in, I would have been like, oh, maybe it was an accident. They took the definitions of men and women out, so I think it was actually malicious. I think they knew what they were doing. I think it was by design to get rid of women's, women's rights and make us all try to conform to some stupid ideology. I don't think that they thought we were going to fight back as much as we are. But yeah.
Well, we're certainly seeing a pushback. We're certainly seeing a swing in the pendulum, which I'm happy with. Hopefully it doesn't overcorrect again, like
Yes.
we've said.
Yes.
But that's good. And these conversations need to happen more. I don't know. My only issue would potentially that maybe there's someone in the space of trans activism that we could have on to have a chat, but I do feel like they're not going to present themselves well. So if you know anyone that potentially could have this chat as well, presenting it from the other end of the spectrum, I'd love to have a chat with them. But
I
just
have
don't
also tried. I don't know of anybody who is.
you know what? And that always,
because they can't. Their arguments don't hold up.
yeah.
It's as simple as that. They just don't hold up. They also
So this goes back to the Charlie Kirk thing where I say they're all idiots.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not.
the arguments.
Maybe they are all idiots.
Yeah, the arguments don't hold up. And then also, I mean, it's one thing like, you know, when you've got these slogans, trans women are women, trans rights are human rights, and they always post these very filtered pictures everywhere to try and get people on board. It's those little quick snippets and sound bites are a lot different to, I don't know, having some, 6'4" brick shit house sitting here for 2 hours talking to you about why he's a woman and getting people for a long period of time to be on board with that. It's next to impossible. So they don't do it.
Well, and
they know.
I don't think that's going to work.
Yeah,
I think
they
they would
don't.
give a poor representation of themselves in their community. And
Yeah.
this is why I like trying to find someone in maybe not that space, any sort of space.
The people who are really interesting to talk to, who you should speak to, are detransitioners who have seen the other side.
Yeah.
These people, I think ultimately detransitioners are going to end this because the sort of the medical scandal of it all. As more and more emerge, and it's quite rapid how many are emerging now. You're not going to be able to ignore all of these people who have just been completely abused by this ideology, but they've seen the other side of it. Like they've completely believed it, and then they've come out the other side. So they have a really interesting perspective in that respect.
Well, as far as I'm aware, post-transition or post-surgery, the suicide rates go up.
Yes. This is the thing. This is how dangerous the gaslighting and manipulation is happening. It's like, no, you can have a great general rule of gender ideology is every claim they make, flip it, the opposite is true. So they say that gender affirming care stops suicide. No, it causes it.
Yeah. Now, I guess you could argue, like if you're going to be devil's advocate, could you argue that, well, they've had it, they've realised that doesn't change society's reflection on them, and that makes them even more depressed, and then I guess you could come at it from that. But
it just doesn't seem to be that's what's happening. I'm sure maybe there's some, but I think some of the young gay boys or young gay men now that have detransitioned, their stories are horrific. I mean, they have to now navigate the rest of their lives without penis and testicles.
Because this idea of confusing sexual orientation with whether they believe they're a man or a woman, they
were groomed online by a lot of autogynephilic men. That's basically what's happening. Remember I said there's a castration fetish element. That's putting that on other people as well. And these young guys are waking up realizing that they've been completely lied to, and they and then they're still being gaslit by the state. Like, oh, no, hardly anyone detransitions. It's not a big deal. It's like, I'm sorry, if you have been experimented on medically, which is what's happening. These are barbaric, brutal surgeries that have no basis in reality. Yeah. Because don't you think it's a special type of evil to tell someone, I'm going to give you a sex change operation, take money from them, give them drugs, put them under anesthetic, perform surgeries on them that don't change their sex? I mean, that's like Nazi level stuff. Like, that is insane. Yeah. And so I think that what part of the problem with detransitioners is obviously they're so distraught by what's happening, they don't want to speak publicly, like quite rightly, like they've been through enough, they don't want to go. There are a few who are, and everyone should hear their stories, because I think they know how bad this all is and how much nonsense it is and how much harm it's causing. It just needs to get to a point where our media and our politicians can't ignore that anymore. So I think it's just our job as citizens to keep putting as much pressure on them as possible. And in the lead up to the election, I mean, God, it's like choosing Dumb and Dumber, isn't it?
It definitely is. Well, we've talked about the preferential voting system and how we still need independent crossbenchers. We still need minor parties in there to be able to go, oi, what you're trying to ram through, this law, that doesn't make sense. So we do need them there. The voting for them is important. Even though they're not going to win and be in power, we do need them to have seats.
And I think that it's putting the pressure on them of whatever the issue is that's important to you, that like the cultural and social issue, it's emailing them frequently, like email your MPs frequently, because a lot of them will get out there and say, oh, there's just not a problem, I don't know about it. But it's like, well, it's either you're ignoring what people are telling you or no one is actually reaching out to you. So I just email my MPs. I'm bored. Hi, just checking in, letting you know men still aren't women, waiting for you to do something about it. Hope you're having a good week.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's a good way to finish up. How do we make an impact? Is that as simple as it is?
Yeah, I think so. And if you are somebody who, I do understand there's lots of people who are in jobs where if they spoke up, they would lose their job. So just support the people who do speak up. And sort of if everyone's sort of, supporting the ones who can speak up, or finding opportunities where you can be someone who does speak up, whatever it is, organizing rallies, all of that sort of stuff, it will all help. We're in a really interesting time where sort of we do have to be politically engaged. We've got to keep all of these people in check, make sure our rights are how they should be. And hopefully in the next few years it's all back to normal and we can, just go to the beach.
Yeah, that would sound lovely. Oh, mate, that's this has been awesome. I needed this, I think. I needed to just reinforce this is what I'm doing. So
good, I'm pleased.
Thanks so much for coming on. Last minute, anything you want to plug before we finish up?
I mean, I suppose it's just anybody who, if you are in a position where you do want to support the Giggle v. Tickle appeal, I mean, the first round cost us just over $500,000. This round's going to be the same.
God.
Yeah, this round's going to be the same. Hopefully we win on the costs on April 7, so it's not a $2 million endeavour, and I've got to go and find that. I don't really want to travel the world raising money for his legal team, but actually I won't. Giggle v. Tickle, gigglecrowdfund.com is the crowdfunding site. It's where you can find out all information about the case, donate, and we do updates on there as well. Like just when there's big things, like we don't update like, another letter was sent today. Like litigation is pretty boring, but when there's big things, we put it all on there. Or follow me on X at Sall Tweets, SALL Tweets. I spell my own name wrong.
I see. Because I went and gave a follow. I don't do enough on X. I need to get on X.
That's my place.
Yeah, you got a big following.
It's my playground.
Yeah. You're quite a large one. You don't have anything on Instagram, nothing like that?
No, my Instagram's private. It's where I just look at Pomeranian puppies and post pictures with stories of my daughter for close family and friends. And then I dabbled with TikTok for a second. Like there's some interview clips on there, but I'm like, it's a cesspool. It's so boring. I was like, I can't cope with it. I just was like, this is not for me.
I have to really pick and choose what I put on there because it just gets community guidelines.
I was kicked off like 4 times. No, this is too hard. I'm still on there at the moment. Yeah. I mean, I got kicked off Blue Sky, whatever that new platform is. I went on. I just went, men aren't women. Bam. My Blue Sky career lasted no longer than 45 seconds.
Oh, well, we'll have some of those clips going up on Instagram. We'll see how they last and TikTok. But thanks so much for joining us. I'll just plug, I am away for a week. I'm going to Thailand, but and I am going to put this episode out today.
Awesome.
Because fuck it. I feel good, but I'm probably not going to interact for the rest of the week. But my show or conference that I'm putting on in April, Return to Zero, giving everyone basically some knowledge with these 6 keynote speakers on how to heal their health and their traumas to be able to come back to a place from neutral, and they can start to move into a much better version of themselves. It's a great lineup of keynote speakers. So tickets are available. We should sell out, but get online onto the website or our bio and you should find tickets. So thanks so much for joining us and appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Cheers.
Bye.